Hey everyone, hope you all had a good week, or at least a good enough week, and the first week of classes went okay, and you're all doing well and safe and sound wherever you are. We're looking forward to a good, peaceful, restful, and blessed Shabbos. Pasuk number 1, the beginning of Sefer Vayikra, Vayikra el Moshe, God calls out to Moshe, V'yidaber Hashem elav me'ol lemor, and speaks to him from the tent of meeting, saying. So if this were live and in person, I would ask, what's unusual about this pasuk? What strikes you as different or out of place? And he would swiftly respond. What's unusual is the introductory formula, Vayikra el Moshe. Normally, all throughout the Torah, it says V'yidaber Hashem elav more. God speaks to Moshe, saying, without needing this introductory formula, if God calls out to him. So what's going on? On one interpretive tradition found in Vayikra and that reverberates through, I think, the majority of the Rishonim, this is meant to be seen against the background of the immediately prior psukim at the end of Sefer Shemot. The scene there is Vayikra Moshe Tamlacha, that Moshe and the people had just completed the construction and inauguration of the Mishkan, and at the moment when it is completed, the cloud of God's glory covers, like smothers the tent of meeting, and the glory of God fills the tabernacle. And because of that, because of this, the temple is saturated with this concentrated presence of God's glory, Moshe could not enter the tent of meeting, either because because the cloud had rested upon it, either because Moshe felt that it was physically impossible. He simply couldn't get in because the space was filled by this cloud, or he was, as the Ramban says, terrified at the tangible presence of the divine glory, that the thought of even trying to enter was unthinkable. And despite the fact that Moshe knows that this is the plan, he's supposed to go into the Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting, in order to continue on receiving the Torah from God and carrying on his dialogue face to face. And he knows that's what he's supposed to do, and he knows what the plan is, and yet he's paralyzed, and he's standing at the outside of the Mishkan, looking in, and feeling that there's no way he can bridge that gap. There's no way he can cross that divide and get across the barrier so that he can have that face-to-face conversation. You already see where this is going. But so it's on this reading, the Vayikra el Moshe is a moment of it's an attempt on God's part to solve this problem of communication at a distance, where Moshe feels it's impossible for them to see each other face to face and to carry on the conversation, and God welcomes him, begs him to please come, calls out to him, please come join me. The Abarbanel has just a wonderful one-line formulation of this. He says, what's the technical lexical difference between Kriya and Dibor, the calling and the actual speaking? It says, V'yeshe fresh ben Kriya u'Dibor, ki ha-Kriya hi merachok. It says, calling is something that you do at a distance, from afar. Kedei shetitkarev ha-nikra el yitkarev ha-nikra el karev, so that the person called will come close to the person doing the calling. V'ha-Dibor hu ben ha-krovim peh el peh. But speech is what happens between people who are already standing face to face. So Kriya is prior to any content. There's no communication, no exchange of information or ideas, or there's nothing said. It's the pure expression of the desire for the person to come close from far away. And it's the language of shouting, calling out, please come be with me. And so on this reading, we have an exceptional moment in the relationship between Moshe and Hashem. It was the one time within this stage of the story where Moshe felt that he couldn't get to where he needed to be to have that conversation, and because there was that distance, we had to have this intervention, this exceptional intervention of the Kriya, calling out for Moshe to come in. But there's another tradition. And this is, it's actually, I think, earlier. It shows up in the Tanaitic Midrash and the Sifra, and is adopted by the Netziv and others. They say it's true that this is the one time that the Torah says Vayikra el Moshe, It never says that otherwise. But they say actually every single time the Torah says Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe, every time God speaks to Moshe, you're supposed to hear there's an implicit, a tacit Vayikra el Moshe appended right before it. Every single time God speaks to Moshe, God calls him first and welcomes him into the conversation. And the Nesiv puts this like very starkly. He says that even when Moshe's already in the Ohel Moed, he's standing there looking at God face to face, and there, and just apparently there was like a pause in the conversation, or he just got there, but he's already there and ready to go. And still, before Hashem starts talking, there's first the Kriya al Moshe, this like invitation, welcoming in to begin conversation, dialogue, and the work of face-to-face relationship. And so on this reading, it's not that this was a one-time exception. It's one of the 13 hermeneutic principles of Yatzam Niklal Lamed Al Klal Kulo. This was the one time where this is needed to be made explicit, because the need was so explicit. It was so clear that God needed to call Moshe in order to bring him in. This is the one time it's written. But actually, what this shows us is that's what always has to happen. Anytime you have you're trying to talk to someone, there needs to be the preparatory work of calling them first, reaching out and saying, I want to look at you. I want to look you in the eye, and I want us to have the like fundamental primordial relational aspect before we begin the exchange of ideas and information. And like I've been feeling this very powerfully. This as like in making every desperate attempt to stay in touch with people and to get in touch with people and to carry on the work of relationship and community and carry on conversations. It requires a lot more work than it used to, even a couple weeks ago. And we have to do a lot more of the calling stage, and that's become like much more overt and explicit. We need to invest much more overtly in the just getting people into some kind of situation where they can see each other's faces and carry on a dialogue. And I think I've just been struck by this deep sense that, both that I feel like, not in every case, but in many cases where now that I've made that investment and that work has become more explicit, I feel like the interactions, even though they're still at a distance, actually have been richer. And making that investment explicitly and having to have put in that extra effort has just strengthened the relational aspect, which is incredibly powerful. And then it's led me to a feeling of hope that that's something that will carry forward even when things are back to normal. That having been put through this test of having to do this work and make these investments overtly, we'll see, even when they become tacit again, we'll continue to do that work and we'll be even better at it. And just to conclude, the Nesiv's formulation, which I can't pull up here, the Nesiv's formulation, again, I said he says, this was even when Moshe is already in the Ohel Moed, peh el peh, looking at God directly. Still, Vayikra Moshe, God calls to Moshe to begin the conversation, and he says it's bishvil chiba. It's on account of, for the sake of love and connection and intimacy. And so the hope I want to go into Shabbos with is the bracha is that we use this opportunity to continue to develop and deepen our relationships, and then going forward our capacity to carry on genuine face-to-face conversations and relationships. Have a wonderful Shabbat.